On today's Locked On Texan podcast, how Dameon Pierce fares against other top rookie backs in Texan franchise history. Pep Hamilton has spoken very highly of John Metchie. What does that actually mean for this offense coming up this season? Guys, I can't wait to talk Texans. Cody, let's bring them in right.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm John Hickman. Of course, this is Cody Davis, who just got back from Summer League covering for the Houston Rockets. Terry Easton out there was looking like he may be the starter for the Rockets by game 15, huh? Maybe 10.
I don't want to say all that.
He looked good.
But I would say there was a moment where I was thinking to myself, is he the best Rockets rookie? And let me just say this. And of course, please go check out my guy, JT Jackson, Locked On Rockets, for all your analysis. Or you can just check out my work over at Sports Illustrated. However, I do want to say this. I do understand Jabari Smith Jr. He's been looking kind of rough on the offensive end. But I've watched this guy for about 4 or 5 days over the last week in practice. Whenever this guy finds his rhythm on the offensive side of the ball, it's going to be nice for that young man.
And I like his
the work he already putting in on defense. Oh my gosh.
I love that effort on defense. And you gotta love the energy right now for the city of Houston. Look, last 2 years, no playoff experiences. Last 2 years, superstar players wanting to get out. Now this year, what do? Well, last year you go out and draft Jalen Green. Last year you go out and draft possibly your franchise quarterback for the next couple of years in Davis Mills, Brevin Jordan, Nico Collins. And so for Houston Texans, not as hype as the Houston Rockets last season. They got Jalen Green and they had a great draft. This year, the hype surrounding both franchises, the Texans going with Derek Stingley Jr. Jr. with the 3rd overall pick, getting John Metchie, getting Kenyon Green, getting Christian Harrison. Like, they nailed it in the draft in terms of paper. A couple of months later, there you go with the Houston Rockets. They nailed it in the draft in terms of the paper. A lot of reason to be excited about rookies right now, but the Houston Texans have a rookie running back, Dameon Pierce, who personally I had an opportunity to speak with this young man on and off camera. Off camera was such fun. But right now, and you guys know me. If you don't know me, follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Interact. I'm always scrolling through Texans Twitter streets, and there is a lot of expectations and hype surrounding Dameon Pierce. And I want to talk about how does he actually fare against other rookie running backs in Texans franchise history. Now, before we dive into it, let me remind you that Arian Foster was not a rookie running back when the Texans found him. He went undrafted, and he had I want to say he had been in the league a year prior to when he actually kind of had a couple of breakout games. But starting with the worst to the best, Alfred Blue, his rookie year, 528 yards, 2 touchdowns, 131 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. Jonathan Wells, drafted in 2002. You guys may not remember that. That was 20 years ago. 529 yards, 3 touchdowns, 48 receiving yards. Dominique Williams, some of y'all may know him as Dominique Davis, his rookie year, 1,031 yards, 8 touchdowns, 351 receiving yards. And the best of it all, a name that you guys, I'm sure you may scratch your head and say, I do remember him playing for Houston until he lost a lot of weight or gained a lot of weight. He gained a lot of weight. Steve Slayton. Man, I thought he was going to be the future. He rushed for over 1,200 yards, 1,282 rushing yards, 9 TDs, 377 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. And Cody, what is the realistic expectation for Dameon Pierce entering his rookie season? Now, before you answer, there's a couple of questions that we have to ask ourselves. Is he a day one starter? Now, you guys at home watching the show, listening to the show, you answered that. And how many snaps played and carries early in the season will he get? Like the first 6 games, that matters as well. Pierce's numbers, I think when you look at how he begins the season may affect his numbers towards the end of the season. Pierce is a running back that made every snap and carry count during his time at Florida, but also he can win snaps away from Mack, away from Burkhead, and any other running back on that depth chart by doing the small things. And what stood out to me during the Senior Bowl from Pierce was how great of a blocker he was as a running back. That matters. How quickly he picks up the design of the play in camp, executing his job, and honestly being more serviceable as a pass catcher than the other running backs on the depth chart. I think it's a trust thing for Pierce. They have to trust that he's ready for those snaps and carries. And I think, like I mentioned, those first 6 games are critical for Pierce because that will affect how he ends off the season, in my opinion.
I don't think the first 6 games will be as crucial. First and foremost, let me say this. I'm not going into Pierce's rookie season with a lot of expectation. John, to answer your first question, is he a day one starter? No. That is definitely going to Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack is looking like the guy that used to kill us when he used to play for the Indianapolis Colts. From what I was able to see doing voluntary OTAs and mandatory minicamp, he is looking really good. If Marlon Mack can stay healthy, then going into Pierce's rookie season, I believe he's going to be utilized more so as a third down back. You mentioned my favorite attribute of Pierce, his ability to be a pass catcher coming out of the backfield. I love how you also talked about his ability to be a blocker. I'm pretty sure the Houston Texans are going to use that attribute for him on the field, probably more so doing third downs or whatever the case might be. And when I take a look at past rookies, because Pierce might be the first rookie running back who is coming into the situation with the Texans where they are not expected to do a lot for the organization in their first season. One, I do believe
Well,
that's also
Dominic Williams he had a lot of high expectations during his rookie year. Remember, that's when the franchise was basically getting kicked off.
yeah, he was in 2003 or 2004. I think he was in 2003, right?
I want to say 3.
But yeah, and here's why I was getting to that. Even when you take a look at a guy like Dominic Williams, most of those guys, especially Williams, were projected to be the day one starter. I'm not looking at Marlon. I'm not looking at Dameon Pierce like that. However, what I will say is because he's playing behind a veteran like Marlon Mack, one, I do believe we're going to get the best version of Pierce down the line, let's say next year or the year after. But two, and most importantly, I do believe in terms of what to expect out of Damien Pierce. I am going to compare him to, and I know he wasn't a rookie when he played for us, Duke Johnson. The 1-2 backfield combo of Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson, I do believe that is what we're going to see out of Dameon Pierce and, of course, Marlon Mack. Mack is going to be your number one running back like Carlos Hyde was, and Duke Johnson is going to come in and give this team something, anything that they might need. The Damien Pierce, he's going to come in and do it, give this team something, especially third down. And remember, John, that first season when we had Duke Johnson here, he gave this team so much he was very valuable as a pass catcher coming out of the backfield, and I do believe that is what the Houston Texans are going to get. So I'm not putting too much expectation on him because of Marlon Mack. However, in terms of those first 6 games, if Marlon Mack doesn't look like the guy he was in Indianapolis, somewhere along the line, then I would say, okay, there should be a switch where Dameon Pierce should be this franchise's number one running back. But I don't think that's going to happen because Marlon Mack looks so doggone good when I had an opportunity to see him early on during camp.
And I do want to say this. This is from Lovie Smith, said that we wanted to upgrade all of the positions, but running back was one that we thought there were some players out there that fit what we wanted to do. Continue with Marlon Mack. I'm going to say that about all our running backs, even with our rookie. We have the depth at running back positions. We need that. They will all have their role. And I think Dameon Pierce will finish the season being the third on that Texans list. right above Alfred Blue and Jonathan Wells for those rushing yards by a rookie running back. Pierce reminds me of Cedric Benson. If you remember, who played for Lovie Smith in the Bears from 2005, 2007, I can see Pierce having a season in 17 games like Benson did in 2006, where he finished the season with 647 yards, 4.1 yards per carry. I think that's a great year, a great way to start off your rookie year, especially if you're not the consensus number one running back on the depth chart. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports information. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Welcome back, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers out there. Make sure you are subscribed to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube. Like us on Facebook as well. Listen, there's a lot of excitement around this rookie class, right, Cody? And I think that it's been a while since Houston has had a full rookie class where every player that was picked in that draft seems like that can be very valuable to the Texan success for their future. And Pep Hamilton talked about what he can do with John Metchie. He said, you go back and look at what he was able to do at a high level in college football, the highest of levels playing at Alabama. You go out and want to project how his skill set will translate to the NFL game. That's a big reason why he's in our building right now. Spending a lot of time with John Metchie when he was in high school as well. He's a high-character young man, and we expect that he'll hit the ground running whenever he's available. Listen, I don't want to talk about what does that mean for John Metchie. You know what I want to talk about, Cody? What does that mean for this offense? This is an offense that was terrible last season. I mean, multiple games where you didn't score a point, only scored 3 points, multiple blowouts, weren't able to keep up. The defense was bad last year, but the offense, at times the defense was bad due to the offense. And the offense struggled throughout the entire year. They were unable to find a playmaker outside of Brandon Cooks. And when you look at John Metchie, because when we look at Nico Collins, everybody is expecting a jump out of Nico Collins this upcoming season. Nico was second on the team receiving yards with right around 400 yards. There was times where he looked like he had it. There was times where he didn't look like he had it. But throughout this offseason, he's gotten quicker. He's gotten a much more twitch to his game in terms of his hips and route running ability. He looks better. So we are expecting a leap out of Nico Collins, but that doesn't mean we're expecting for him to be a playmaker. Now, when you think about playmakers on your offense, you think about guys that when they get the ball, that's the face you make. When they get the ball, that's the face you make, and Houston desperately needs a player like that. I've said it for the longest. Bill O'Brien was not the type of head coach, and Tim Kelly as his offensive coordinator, those were not the pair of coaches that you'd want for a playmaker, right? I think there's players that Houston drafted that Houston could have tremendously benefited from if they allowed that player to fulfill the X-factor playmaker role. And John Metchie has the opportunity to not only be that, but in his career, he has an opportunity to be either a solid number one or a great number two. We'll see how his skill set actually does translate to the NFL, and his quarterback play matters as well. But when you hear him say, I've been around him since high school, and that's the reason why he's in our building, and he's played at the highest level in college football at Alabama under Nick Saban. He's a winner. Those are some of the traits and intangibles that you want out of a player. So when I look at a Metchie in this offense that everybody is excited to see, no, he doesn't need to get rushed back, but I see a player in year 1 and 2 with Brandon Cook still in your roster and the expected growth out of Nico Collins, and maybe this offense, which is changing. Pep Hamilton talked about that you will see the growth in the offense during the preseason. They're still laying the groundwork for that. But I see a player that can be utilized as a X factor playmaker, which fans should get excited about. Davis Mills, if you're listening, you should get excited about this player because he can make your life and your job a whole lot easier if you're able to find him in those zones and just sit back and allow him to make a play. I love these high words from Pep Hamilton, the offensive coordinator for the first year here in Houston, and it seems like he understands his players and how they'll work in the offense just by speaking highly of them.
You called him an X factor playmaker. You say one day could be a solid number one option. I'm going to take it a little bit step further. The talent of John Metchie, I do believe that he can be any team's number one option, especially once he finds his niche on the NFL level. And I think even as a rookie, coming off the ACL injury, he still is going to be able to give this team an extra lift. Because, John, like you just mentioned, we all know Brandon Cooks is by far the only target Davis Mills had last season. Nico Collins was a hit or miss. Collins, he's going to be this team's number 2 receiver, but I think him and John Metchie, depending on how he comes back from his ACL injury, those two guys can share that burden. And this is what makes me excited about the Texans rookie class and their sophomore class. All of these guys do not have, except for Davis Mills in a way, but all of these guys do not have the burden to go out there and be this team's number 1 wide receiver, number 1 running back. Just like how I mentioned for Dameon Pierce in the first segment. Even when you take a look at John Metchie, and I said I could see a situation at some point this season, him and Nico Collins sharing the burden of being a number 2 option, that's going to help both of those guys to continue to develop in the NFL. Which means at some point, if you keep those two guys around and Brandon Cooks, he starts to get over, or you depart from him, or whatever the case might be, get older, then that's going to give this franchise another opportunity to have a very good wide receiver duo. They had that with the D-Hop and Will Fuller era. And look, I understand that it did not end it like we all hoped that it would. However, even when you had D-Hop and Will Fuller, we never really saw that duo at its best because Will Fuller was always hurt. Now, you take a look at what could possibly be with those two, plus you are giving them an opportunity to grow together. John, as long as Davis Mills can find these guys, this offense is going to be a complete 180 from what we saw last year. Now, will that bring, wins next season to the point where we're looking at, oh my God, the Texans might be going to the playoffs? Probably not. However, my number 1 top priority for this organization, including the rookie class, especially someone like John Metchie, who is my favorite draft pick in this year's draft, it's just going to help with their development. And I keep saying development because that is the number 1 priority I want to see this organization do in terms of this rookie class and especially the second-year class.
And I'll say this, if there's one word that I can use to describe what I believe John Metchie and Nico Collins can be with one another, because as of right now, they do look like the Texans' future at wide receiver. Brandon Cooks is only here for 2 more seasons. And even if he take a pay cut to remain here in Houston if he wants, I do not see him being this team's number 1 option. What would that be? 2024 going into the 2024 season? I don't see it, at least. And you would look at those 2 receivers being the ones that are actually going through the growing pains with Davis Smith. So if I could think of one word for Nico Collins and for John Metchie on the field, it's compliment. I think they complement each other.
Yes,
I think when you look at the big biter receiver, Nico Collins, hey, man, get your ass in that red zone, score touchdowns. That is how you're going to make your money. Big play ability, big catching play ability, coming down with the ball, 17 yards per catch. We should see games where he's averaging 15 to 20 yards per catch. John Metchie, on the other hand, he's one of those receivers that I can really see kind of like a Victor Cruz in a sense, where he's going to get under you, make a guy miss, and now chains are moving praises being sung from the stadium because maybe he's scoring touchdowns. I like these two receivers, and I think that they have a good future together in Houston with Davis Mills and Pep Hamilton as OC. Hey, by the way, which NFL stars move the betting line the most? Starting July 18th, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at Bet Online. Available July 18th on Locked On NFL or wherever you get your podcast. Also, this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With their ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure this pain that we go through? We sit waiting for them to go find something in their warehouse, choosing the only brand they carry. When we have access to rockauto.com at home with our computers or this little thing right here in our pocket. Save time and money when shopping with rockauto.com. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are always reliably low for every customer. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On Texans in there. How did you hear about us box? So they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Thanks for making Locked On Texans your first listen today. Now make your second listen to Locked On NFL Podcast. Our national NFL experts and insiders keep fans dialed in with the biggest stories and the latest news from around the league because an offseason doesn't equal a break in the action. So make sure you're checking out the Locked On NFL Podcast. Now, how do you feel like Zach Wilson's mother felt on Mother's Day when he showed up to Red Lobster or wherever rich people
Oh my gosh.
with her best friend? Let's talk about that. So the national media is loving this right now out of Zach Wilson. I see the jokes and I see that he got that dog in him. And honestly, I know this is a Texan show, but honestly, I respect it. You gotta respect it. Hey, listen, Mom, I'm not a kid no more. And listen, Zach Wilson is he has a Tom Brady face. Okay, let's just be honest. He has one of those faces where I can see him being a model if this NFL career don't work out. And based off last season, it probably won't if you keep playing like that. So he can definitely switch careers. But this Zach Wilson and the mama best friend and his best friend had his girlfriend and now they mad at each other, but he's still sleeping with the mom's best friend. Like, you gotta think about the mom in this. Is she worried? Is she safe? How does she feel? Is she being held at night? What's going on in New York?
Why is nobody saying anything about the mom's best friend? Because if that is his mother's best friend, that means he's what? She's at least over 20 years older. Like, come on now. I'm not trying to get demonetized, but is this a age ain't nothing but a number situation? I mean, Zach Wilson is what? Come on now.
21, 22, around that time. Around that age. 23 maybe. All right, listen.
And you know where I'm going when I say age ain't nothing but a number. I mean, but this is why Davis Mills is going to be better, because Mills wouldn't do that. Mills all nice and wholesome. Mills got a nice girlfriend. You know, Mills stay focused on the game, on the field. You know, and it goes back to, the Houston Rockets in a way. Jalen Green got a nice girlfriend, and his focus is on the court. And I say that because the last two superstars we had here in the city of Houston representing both the Texans and the Rockets, clearly their minds wasn't on the court and the field, and the one whose mind wasn't on the field, man, that decision, man, it still might work out in the Texans' favor.
And listen, I have a theory that I don't think Deshaun's going to get more than 10 games. I've been seeing a lot of people say that. Listen, I am interested to see how this works out with Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns. I think there's a lot that we're not getting the information in terms of the public. There's also some information out there in the public we necessarily don't want to talk about that here today, but I thought we should just kind of end off with some fun. Just saying
That's a
that
wild situation, man.
Zach Wilson, I may have to go ahead and get that jersey, man.
Like
All white.
all over, from the girlfriend to the best friend to the mom's best friend, even Zach Wilson himself. Nobody has no type of level of respect for anybody?
Wow, I'm in the NFL.
Am I the only one that's like, what in the world is going on here?
Why should
this
I have
whole
any
story
respect?
does not make sense.
She probably used to babysit that young man.
Which is even more crazy. So what was going on during babysitting?
This is the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. No, thank you guys. It's one of those slow grind days, and thank you for sticking around. Shout out to Zach Wilson. I'm John.
Ain't no shout out to Zach Wilson, nothing.
Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans. And again, subscribe to the Locked On Texan podcast on YouTube. Just go to the search bar, type in Locked On Texans. You'll see our ugly mugs as soon as it pops up.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, CotyDavis _24. That little baby says, got me a little worried, So, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.